Okay, here we are on page 6, which is the last page of advanced trig. Some more practice on interpreting trig models. So here in the first picture, we have what they say is a cosine function. It's kind of funny because this does not look like a cosine function. Remember, cosine functions look like smiles, and this one starts down, so it's actually more like a frown. It turns out that a frown is a smile upside down, and a cosine function that looks like a frown is actually a cosine with a negative a value. Okay, so do it as if it was like this, and then make the a value negative, and then it'll turn it upside down. Do you see? Okay, because like a negative multiplication will invert the function. Okay, so let's see. Normally, we're going to look for the d and a value here, and the d value would be the middle value between these two heights. It looks like it would be about there, which would be 1, right? So I think that the d value is going to be 1, but just to make sure, I'm going to look at the min value, which is -2, and the max value, which appears to be 4, and I'm going to add them together and divide by 2, which gives me 2 divided by 2, which is equal to 1. So yes, d is equal to 1. So d is equal to 1. What about the a value? The a value is the distance from the middle to the top. So that's from 1 to 4. So the a value should be 3, right? If you use the formula, you'll take the difference between 4 and -2. So you would do 4 minus -2 and divide by 2 to get the a value. So that would be 4 plus 2, which is 6, divided by 2, which is 3. Okay? So a equals 3 and d equals 1. Oh, but we forgot. A should be negative because this is a frown instead of a smile, so it should be a -3 instead of a +3. Okay? All right. And you can check that. You could like go to your calculator and you could type in -3 cosine x plus 1. And you could check to see that it matches the picture. Oh, it's a little wide, right? So I need to change the window so that it goes from 0 to 360. 3, 6, 0. Graph. And then you can see that it's going to look like the one there. Okay? All right, then you can test your answers. Next one. So now it says this is also a cosine function, and this one actually does look right. It starts at the top and goes down, so that looks like a smile. So that is a cosine function. And first of all, I'm going to look to see what the bottom, where the bottom is and where the top is. Looks like the top is at, looks like 2.5, doesn't it? Let me zoom in a bit. Yeah, that looks like 2.5. So the height is 2.5. And the height of the bottom is, let's see, -2.5. So it is centered here at 0. Okay, so the d value is going to be 0, right? And the a value is going to be from the middle to 2.5, so it's going to be a equals 2.5. And the b value is going to depend on the period. Remember, the period is equal to 360 divided by b. And the period in this case appears to be, let's see, the cosine function is a smile. So it starts at the top, goes down, and goes back up again. In this case, we are seeing half of it here. From here to here, we only see half. That means half the cosine function is 360 wide. So if we wanted a full function, that would be 720 wide. So I'm going to put that the period is 720. And if I do that, then, and I solve for b, I'll find that b is actually equal to 360 divided by 720. If I cross multiply, I'll get that. So b is equal to 0.5. So b is equal to 0.5. Okay? All right. Let's see what's next. Number 4. A function in the form y equals t plus s times cosine rx is shown. The point Q is a maximum and P is a minimum. Use this information to find the values of t, s, and r. Okay, so this is a pretty similar question compared to the others, right? They have some decimal values which make it a little bit more difficult. So let's see. So it looks like the minimum height here is 1, right? The 1 there. And the maximum height appears to be 5.2. So we can find the d value by adding the two together. And if you ever forget the formulas, just look on the formula sheet. They're there. We add the 1 and the 5.2 together, and then we get 6.2 divided by 2, and then we get 3.1. So the d value is 3.1. Now in this case, they don't call it d, they call it t. Okay, so in this case, actually the 3.1 is the t value, is what they call it. Now the a value, which they're calling s, let's see what that is. The a value is the distance from, let's use the formula. It's kind of hard to look at it visually when you don't have like whole numbers, okay? So if you look at the formula for a, it's max minus the min divided by 2. So that's going to give us 4.2 divided by 2, which is equal to 2.1. So that is our s value. Okay? What about the r value? The r value is related to the period. Period equals 360 divided by b, but in this case they call it r. What is the period here? Well, it looks like this is a, oh, look at this. It's a frown. It's not a smile. So that means the cosine function is upside down, which means that our a value, even though it's 2.1 in magnitude, we need to put a negative sign to make the smile into a frown, right? So that's something that we need to keep in mind. This is actually going to be negative 2.1, okay, not positive 2.1, because it's an upside down cosine. It's like that instead of like that, okay? Now this upside down cosine, they didn't even show it going all the way to the end, I don't think. It's going to go a little bit farther before it finishes a cycle. So how do we even see if it's a complete cycle if they don't show it? I guess maybe this is a complete cycle if we go from here to here, okay? But just to make sure, let's go from like, let's look at half the cycle. So we'll start from here and then we'll go to the maximum point. That would be half of a cosine, right? It's half of a frown. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 units wide. If we want to have a whole cycle, that would be 8 units wide. So our period is going to be 8. So it's 8 equals 360 divided by r. And so if we solve for r using algebra and cross multiplication, we would get 360 divided by 8 for r. And so that would be, let's see, it would be 45. R is equal to 45 then. Okay? All right. Now let's look over at B, because B is asking some more questions about the same thing. So this function models the temperature in a refrigerator unit. Given that y is measured in degrees Celsius and x is time measured in hours, determine which of T, S, and R are related to the following quantities. The average temperature in the unit. So if the temperature is the height of the function, so it's the x-axis, or the y-axis, then I would label this big T, right? And then the x-axis is the time, right? So I'll put small t here. It wants to know the average temperature in the unit. The average temperature is the middle temperature in this case, and the middle temperature we know is D, which is 3.1. So the average temperature is 3.1 degrees Celsius. And then it says the difference between the minimum temperature in the unit and the average temperature. Well, we know that the distance from the minimum to the middle, or the middle to the maximum, is equal to A. So that would be 2.1. The time taken for the unit to complete an entire cycle of operation, that would be equal to the period. And we calculated that the period was 8. Okay, so that's it for that problem. Let's go to the last problem. A function in the form y equals a sine bx, so in this case they're looking for a, and they're looking for b, and they're looking for d, is shown. The point A is the maximum and b is the minimum. Use this information to find the values of a, b, and d. Okay, so we've done this many times before. We're back to doing sine instead of cosine. Remember, sine has the shape up, down, and then up again. So one cycle of sine starts here and goes up to here. All right, let's look at the heights. So the height here is negative 6.2. The height here appears to be 4.6, but kind of hard to see, isn't it? So I'm going to write 4.6. I think that's 4.6. So if I want to find the d value, what I do is I add the two together and then I divide by 2. So I would do 4.6 plus negative 6.2 and divide by 2. So I can't do that without the calculator, so I will turn the calculator on and I will do 4.6 plus negative 6.2, and that gives me negative 1.6. I divide that by 2 and it gives me negative 0.8. So the d value is going to be negative 0.8. Okay, and the a value should be the distance from negative 0.8 to 4.6, or the distance from negative 0.8 to negative 6.2. Or we could use the formula. Let's use the formula because these have a bunch of decimals and the formula keeps us from getting confused about that. So remember that the amplitude is equal to the max minus the min, and it's easy to get confused between this formula and the d formula, so go ahead and look at the formula sheet when you need to. So the max is 4.6, and the min is negative 6.2. So be careful, it's minus negative 6.2. So that's actually plus 6.2. So we're going to do 4.6 minus negative 6.2, so it's plus 6.2. And then we hit enter, and then we divide by 2. That keeps us from having to put in the parentheses, right, if we do it in 2 steps. So it's equal to 5.4. 5.4 is the value for A. So now we have A and we have D. The only thing we don't have yet is B. How do we find B? B, we need to use the period. The width of one cycle appears to be 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So we know that the formula that relates B with period is equal to 360 divided by B. And in this particular case, period is 4. So we got that. We cross multiply, and so we end up with B is equal to 360 divided by 4, which is equal to 90. So B is equal to 90. So now we have all our information. We have B equals 90, we have D equals negative 0.8, and we have A equals 5.4. Now let's look at the last question. This function models the height above or below sea level of a part of a renewable energy generator, given that y is measured in meters and x is time measured in minutes. Interpret each of the values a, b, and d. Okay, so y is the height of the water and x is the time. And so let's see. Just like in the last example, the d value is the average of the y value, so it would be the average height. So d is average height of the water. And the a value would be the difference between the average height, and the min, or max, okay? And what would B mean? B is related to the period, okay? And in this particular case, since it's equal to 90, that means that the period is equal to 4, right? So since B is equal to 90, that means that the period, that one cycle of the water going up and down, is going to be equal to 4. Okay? B is actually related to what we call frequency, and we could interpret it as a multiple of frequency, but they never talk about that in the book, and I don't want to confuse you, so what you can always do is relate it back to the period. Okay? All right, that's it for this unit.